You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. For previous episodes, visit thinkingcountry.com or find the podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud by searching for Meet the Farmers. Hello everyone and welcome to the show. This is episode 46 of Meet the Farmers, which is being supported by the Chadacre Agricultural Trust, so big thanks to them. My guest today is Fiona Siddall, who runs Easton Farm Park near Woodbridge in Suffolk. Fiona grew up on the farm and then had a career away in London, living there for 8 years before returning to Suffolk. Easton Farm Park is an open farm with the tagline, "Family fun together, whatever the weather." And on the day that I visited, this was particularly true because it was absolutely pouring down with rain. So without further ado, let's head over to Fiona. Fiona, thank you so much for having me here today.
That's a pleasure.
Despite we've just been talking about childcare issues because it's the summer holidays, and I suppose that's probably one of my first questions actually. In the summer holidays, which is clearly must be one of your busiest times of year, how do you balance everything?
Lots of begging, lots of kids coming to work, which is helpful. My children are 8, 6 and 4, and they're a prime age for actually enjoying the farm, which is lovely. And we've got some new glamping pods shaped like cows on the farm. So we've had a few nights staying in there over the holidays, which they've loved. But also just we've got some lovely local school leavers who are always looking for a bit of childcare. So it's trying to balance a few days a week with the children, a few days a week at work. You know, it's not always perfect, but we do our best.
So they're the fourth generation of your family growing up on the farm here. Tell me a bit about the history of the place and how the Kerrs first came to Easton Farm.
My grandfather, Willie Kerr, came down from the west coast of Scotland in 1938, and he rented this site at Easton and the adjoining farm at Letheringham. As time progressed, they came on the market and he was able to purchase them. And his sons, my father John and his brother Jimmy, both worked around the farm. My father took a tenancy at Blacksall, or Little Glenman, just up the A12. And my Uncle Jimmy set up Easton Farm Park as it is in 1974. We were the second farm park in the country.
I was going to say, that was something that I had no idea. I came here as a kid. I had no idea that it was quite that.
Pioneers of diversification.
Really well.
No, he'd been on a farming trip to Holland and seen a similar kind of educational farm. And it was more of a rare breed farm and bygone museum. I remember there being, the room next to us was full of bygone machinery back in the day, and these are the listed buildings that we're in currently, part of the original Victorian farm. We're sitting in what was the cafe. It's now an event space, and the bygone museum is now home to our village preschool. So the buildings have had a lot of lives since then. But he saw this farm idea in Holland and came back and wanted to set it up. The only other farm park in the country at the time was the Cotswold Farm Park, which had been set up by Joe Henson, who is Adam Henson's father from Country Farm and the founder of the Rare Breed Survival Trust in 1973, and he was really helpful in guiding Uncle Jimmy in terms of where he went. And obviously, like we all do, he had various planning issues when he mooted this idea locally, because it was totally an unknown concept. But yes, it's been running since 1974, and I've been here since probably coming on for 20 years actually.
Tell me about life for you growing up here.
Well, we grew up on the farm at Blacksall, but I remember working here in this particular space. We're in the old tea room from a very young age. Clearing tables was my first task, filling the dishwasher, emptying the dishwasher, and gradually was promoted to I think at one point when I was 17 I was even allowed to drive a tractor one year, which was generally reserved for the boys. But yes, we would always be working here in the holidays. And I remember when we were very small on the school run, we used to have a dairy herd here. Mum would get out her churn and dip it in the tank and get our milk and take it home every night. So very fond memories.
And you've got two brothers.
Two brothers and a sister.
Two brothers and a sister.
Yeah.
So there are 4 of you growing up. Did any of you / all of you want to get involved in agriculture from an early age, or? No?
I think in those days, this was back in the 70s and 80s. It was much more encouraged for the boys to do the farming. Laura and I were encouraged to actually get an education instead, and both went to university. And the boys were very much more agricultural. I honestly didn't think I'd ever be involved in the family farm, not through any dispute, but just because I was studying French and Russian. It wasn't really compatible, and once graduated I went to London. But there came a point where my mother was wanting to retire and talking about giving up the farm park, and I thought, this can't possibly happen. So found myself back in Suffolk, and still am here today.
What do you think, looking at it in a positive view, what did you learn in that time before you came back to the farm, in your 8 years in London and your time in Bristol before that? What could you take from that time to perhaps bring to your experience now?
My specialism when I was in London was human resources and employment, which frankly is invaluable every day. We have a team here, a lot of them are seasonal, some of them are not, ranging from age 14 to 70 plus, doing a variety of different tasks at different levels, needing different nurturing, and those skills that I learnt through the jobs I had in human resources in London and the training I did there, it's given me a really good grounding and backing in terms of looking after people and making sure that everybody gets the time and the respect and the rights that they need.
Do you remember that day when you thought, I'm going back to Suffolk?
Well, I was working. I'd been working for a big French cosmetics firm, which was fantastic, and left them to work for a .com. This was around 2000, because that was the thing to be doing at that point. And I worked for a big it was big in the States but small in the UK, called eToys, and it was all online toy retailing. And we thought we were going to nail it, but there were big companies like Toys R Us and those that all they had to do was basically create a website. So it went spectacularly bust at some point, and one of the last jobs we had to do as the HR team was to make everybody redundant, which was painful. So I then took my redundancy and went to Australia and went travelling, and it was then that I decided that I wasn't going to go back to an HR job, because it's there's no upside really on that if you're doing that kind of thing, and that's when I spoke to Mum, and she said come back, and it was a perfect storm really. The company had just gone bust, and it was a good time to make a break.
Was it a shock to the system moving back?
Yes. But not. It's lovely being back working with family, and I work with my family every day now, and it's great, and we're very close. What I found funny, because I was not married at the time, I was single and I was living on the farm, and having lived in a flat in London where you had lots of very, very close, physically close neighbours, but everyone minds their own business. Everybody knew my business all the time. There was no private space, and so that took some adjusting to. Although, I've come to love it, because even though with social media and the internet and all the things we can do on our phones and our iPads and our computers, the village still has the original social network, which is the stop and chat, the going to the pub. The gossip gets spread, but in that historical, natural way, which I think, I hope we can continue to preserve the face-to-face social network.
Tell me about Easton Farm Park itself and some of your key attractions.
Easton Farm Park, our customer base is generally families and schools, and children really aged kind of 8 or 9 and below. And we have lots of regular customers, season ticket holders, as well as people who come in each year or who've never been before. And the main things that we do, it's about getting people up close and personal with nature and the countryside and the animals. And to that end, every day we do a hug a bunny, we do a meet the animals where they can meet the ponies, they can ride a pony, collect the eggs, hold the chicks. In the spring, we do bottle feeding with the lambs. So it's very much about that interactive experience with the animals, with some fun thrown in. So we have the play park and the indoor play. We've got some lovely walks down to the River Deben, which we don't maximise, which we need to. There's always things to do on a farm, isn't there? But we need to do more of, and teaching people about the biodiversity down in our Suffolk River valleys. So that's mainly what we aim to. It's about getting families out into the countryside for just a lovely natural day out. We're not slick, we're not sophisticated, we don't aim to be. We want to give people a safe, old-fashioned day out, really.
And you do quite a lot of events.
We are doing more and more events. We've now got a young lady in the office who loves events. So I think so far this year we've done fairies, unicorns. We even did a space day to celebrate 50 years on the moon and had our rocket and a planetarium on site. We've done dinosaurs. We've also got, this Saturday, we've got our first ever dog show, and through the rest of August we've got a superhero day. So yeah, lots of fun, and we obviously the general seasonal events we do as well. We do lots around Easter, Halloween. Father Christmas comes. We're very lucky he comes to visit us in December.
Very, very heavy schedule. So.
Well, the business historically was April to September, and in order to get the right team, you do need to try and offer year-round work to people, and that means trading year-round, because we have very hungry Suffolk punchers, horses, and very hungry animals through the winter, and Victorian listed buildings that need lots of love and attention. So, we have to make sure that we can pay those bills.
Because you raised it, let's talk about those Suffolk punches. It was a question later on, but let's talk about it now. How long have you had Suffolk punches on the farm, and why are they such an iconic breed, an iconic animal for Suffolk?
Well, that's in the title. They are called the Suffolk Punch. They were originated from our county. They are the horse that represents our once brilliant football team, soon to be brilliant, I'm sure, football team again, and they're amazing. They used to be. We've always had Suffolk since I can remember. We've been breeding Suffolks, and you speak to some of the grandparents and the great grandparents that turn up on the farm. They remember working with the Suffolks. They were the tractor. And it's for us. It's hard to imagine the pace, the lifetime, the way the stallions would walk around the county to service the mares. It was. So I think everything is moving so fast. I think this piece of history, if we can retain it and tell people how far we've progressed in the last 50 to 100 years, it's an important story. And they're fantastic. They're beautiful animals.
Talking about, I suppose, open farms generally, and on that sort of education side of farm parks, how has that changed for you since you first came back? Are you telling the same kind of stories, talking about the same kind of facts, info that you were then, or has it dramatically changed?
Depends on the age group. For the little ones, not a drastic amount, because I don't think the curriculum has changed a dramatic amount. I think a lot of it is still around animal family groups, habitat, environment, the food chain, so the cow to the milk and things like that. We have some older groups that come in, and there's a particular geography group that come in here, about 13, and every year, it used to be we were talking a lot about the Common Agricultural Policy and these things, and we've gone through immense change in terms of what they're studying now. It's all about the changing in policy, the changing in cropping, but the changing in diversification is much more important to them. So I think we follow the curriculum, so it really depends how the curriculum is changing as to what we do educationally. But what we find generally with our customers is that they are not so squeamish as they used to be about, for example, those pigs, or those sausages came from our pigs that you saw as piglets 3 months ago. People don't seem to be squeamish about that because the animal has a purpose. But they are very rigid, which is great, around recycling and waste and those types of things. So we've gone down a route in our cafe where everything is recyclable, everything is made out of vegware. We've got composting bins in there. We use a bin firm, Sackers, who they have a recycling plant. Everything gets recycled and sorted at their plant. and it's quite an important story, and I think we're all trying to do our bit, putting pressure on the toy manufacturers to say, why have we got so much plastic on the toys we're selling in the gift shop, and in every aspect just trying to do what we can to make sure that we're helping the cause, and customers are very hot on that as well.
Right, we're going to try if it's okay with you, the 1 minute soapbox. So Fiona, do you have a topic in mind?
I do. It's about the agricultural education of young people.
Super. So you have 1 minute starting from now.
At Easton Farm Park, we employ a lot of students through the holidays and on work experience, generally to work with the animals, and that includes feeding and mucking out the animals, working with customers, helping with the activities, so hug a bunny, things like that. And what we find is that there is a massive disparity between what these youngsters are being taught and the practical needs of the animals. We find we're doing a lot of training. The kids have no idea to do the basics, to get on the end of a broom. They don't know. They're being taught about how to look after reptiles. Frankly, how many reptile jobs are there in the country? None of them know how to trim a goat's foot, or how to groom a pony, or muck out a stable, or any of those things, or just the essentials of this animal needs hay every day, look out for it. This animal needs water look out for it. And my senior team get quite frustrated by the complete lack of.
Whoa, that's it.
Oh,
That's it.
that's so short.
A minute is such.
Anyway, is that enough?
Very good. That was brilliant. How important do you think it is to have farms open to the public and operations such as this, so that families and children can interact with farm animals? Quite a general question there.
It is a general question, and there's so many levels in which you can answer it. At the end of the day, farm animals are our food. It's difficult at the moment, and we're in touch with a lot of other farm parks because there's a very active anti-meat campaigns going on around, and it can be quite a dangerous place to be, which sounds extraordinary, but in a not a dangerous place to be on a farm, but to promote the fact that you're growing these lovely pigs and you're going to be eating them. Although our customers are very supportive of that, there can be some very negative feedback from that in some quarters, and obviously everything's accessible through the internet these days. So I think it's vital that we connect with where our food comes from and what our food is, and how it gets to the supermarket, so that people can make informed choices as to whether they do or don't want to eat meat. There is evidence that mental health can be massively improved by having access to places like this, be it ourselves or be it just a park. But I think we have a service to provide there. And it's about building confidence for children. I see children coming through here as visitors, and the first time they come, they won't touch an animal. The next time they come, they might. And give them 6 months, they'll be stroking a Suffolk punch horse, which is 100 times their size. So I feel we do have a purpose, and if people can have a day out and learn something at the same time, is there a problem with that?
What do you think your biggest challenges are going to be in the short term and the longer term?
I think finding suitably skilled staff is a problem. There's a lot of people out there, but it's finding ones that really want to work is key. I think the climate, I don't know whether that's going to be a problem for us or not be a problem for us going forward, but you're here on a wet day. We say whatever the weather, we have lots of indoor spaces, but we're all people. We might not go out and spend 30 quid on a rainy day when we know that we probably have a better time on a sunny day. So I think the weather, who knows what's going to happen politically with Brexit, but I think as a small domestic tourism business, I don't think whatever happens with Brexit will be negative in general for our business, but there may well be fallout that we're not aware of in terms of supplies of food and other things that we need.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, actually, because in the last episode, when I was speaking to Sally and Sian Bendel about this, and they had a very similar response, that actually it is, in this particular instance with open farms, it is very uncertain, because you don't necessarily fall into any particular camp.
No.
There's both the tourism aspect, which could go either way post-Brexit, with value of pound and etc., with people and day trips changing, and then there is that broader and change as well. So it's, a lot of unknowns.
And, like any industry, there is always a risk. There have been animal diseases on farms. It's about making yourselves as risk-proof as possible, and that's what we try and do. Is to keep our customers safe, make sure they're all washing their hands, and that they're all having a safe, happy day on the farm.
What's the future for you and the family here?
Well, we've literally in the last 3 weeks just opened a new campsite of 70 pitches with a new visitor centre and shower block. So I think we'll be doing the day job for a few years longer to pay back the bank manager, and which is really exciting.
Yeah.
We aren't going anywhere. So my husband works in London, so he is quite happy to do that commute for a few more years. And the kids are growing.
Yeah.
So I already have my 6-year-old who's desperate for a job. So if I can keep that enthusiasm going until she's old enough to actually do a job, I think the future might be safe.
I suppose you're approaching the 50th anniversary as well, aren't you? Ish.
Yes. I thought you were talking about my 50th anniversary. I was like, that's coming too.
I wouldn't get that personal.
Yeah, so it's, what are we now, 74, so we've got another 5 years here, 45 this year for the farm park. So yeah, we're part of the furniture, and we want to make sure that we're part of the furniture for a long time hence.
Fiona Siddall, who spoke to me at Easton Farm Park back in July. Next time, I'll be talking to Emily McVeigh at the Kenton Hall estate in Suffolk. It'll be our last East Anglian-based episode for a little while. In the meantime, you can hear all previous episodes at thinkingcountry.com. You can also hear selected episodes on iTunes, SoundCloud, eatfarmnow.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I want to thank the Chadacre Agricultural Trust for supporting this episode. I also want to thank Tom Bland, as always, for everything he does on the production side, and of course to Fiona and everyone at Easton Farm Park. I'd really appreciate it if you could share this episode with somebody and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. And I'll look forward to you joining me next time on Meet the Farmers.